Good morning, everybody. We're live here from the birdhouse, and we are mid-April already, which is kind of hard to believe, but the days are getting longer. The birds are starting to chirp more, and they are out there looking for a mate, and some of them are already starting to nest. So I thought today we should talk about birdhouses, cavity nesters, how you can attract them to your yard. And as always, we'll share photos that you guys have sent in. We've got some great photos to share, and we always love to know what kind of things you're seeing. So put those in the comments. If you have questions, you can put those in there. You can just say hi. If you are local to the area today at the birdhouse, today is Saturday, April 12th, we do have a tasting of the world famous peanut butter balls by John John's Bakery. They are here right now, set up until 1 o'clock, doing a tasting. So we've got that going on today as well. But let's get started. Let's go here. So first of all, before we even get into the nesting a bit, I like to look at the predicted migration maps this time of the year to try to get an idea of how many birds we can expect to flow in and which days are going to be good to go out and go birding. And I love this site called Birdcast. It is powered by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and they use weather data and different things to predict how many birds are going to migrate through in a certain evening, because keep in mind, a lot of these birds do migrate overnight. And as the color grows in intensity, as it gets more yellow or more white, that means there's more migration coming through the area. So right now, this is the map of the predicted migration overnight tonight. So at least where I am in Western New York, doesn't look like there's going to be too much activity coming through tonight into tomorrow. That being said, there are migrants coming through, and at the end of the broadcast, I'll show you some photos that you guys have taken of some migrants that do have come in. But look at this, the night of April 13th, so Sunday going into Monday, that color intensifies as far as the migration here where I am in Western New York. So then it kind of drops down a bit going into the night of the 14th into the 15th. So it's always fun to pull this up. We'll check on this as the season goes on to give you a better idea of when the hot migration times are. So depending on where you're watching from, if you're down in Texas or Florida, now's a really good time for migration down by you. We're still not at peak. We're nowhere near peak yet, but it's starting to happen. And we get questions a lot this time of the year. When are the hummingbirds coming? When are the orioles coming? And usually early May for us, at least for Western New York, that is when they start to roll in. Every once in a while, we get a report of an oriole or two late April, maybe that last week of April, but really early May is when they're going to start, and they really are flowing in come mid-May. So keep that in mind. But a lot of birds that are resident here that might not migrate are already scoping out nesting sites and looking for places to nest. Today I'm focusing on the ones that nest in cavities or hollow spaces, but I thought I would start just by showing some of the birds that are common here that don't nest in cavities. So there's not really houses that you can put out for birds like cardinals or blue jays or goldfinches or Baltimore orioles or even hummingbirds. So they'll all do their own thing. They build their nests in trees or in shrubs. You can put out nesting material, which I'll show you in a little bit, to help entice them to nest, but they don't nest in houses. A lot of people have been asking about hummingbird houses. There's ads out there for hummingbird houses, but hummingbirds don't nest in houses. So don't be fooled by those. The pictures on a lot of those are very photoshopped, but this is a hummingbird nest right here on a little branch, and that is where they nest. So keep that in mind. And we still have yet to get the hummingbirds and orioles in town, but birds like cardinals especially are already starting to pair up, and so don't be surprised if you start seeing them with nesting material. Some interesting nesters, things like brown-headed cowbird, which you might be seeing in your yards, or in mixed flocks of blackbirds. The brown-headed cowbird is what's called a nest parasite and will lay its eggs in the nest of other birds. And on the right, there's a picture of a bird's nest with a cowbird egg in it. That cowbird egg is much, much bigger than the other eggs. In general, the cowbirds tend to, the nestlings that they hatch earlier than the other birds too. And as they grow, they tend to be bigger than the other nestlings, and they can sometimes outcompete those nestlings. But that's what makes them so successful, is that the eggs hatch quick, and they're very demanding of the parent taking care of them, which is a bird of a different species. And usually the bird will focus on whichever nestling is bigger and seems more fit. So the cowbirds can really have a good advantage there if their egg is in the nest of another bird. So that's another type of nester we have in the area. But now is a fabulous time to put out your nest boxes. If you haven't already, now is the time. Most birds do like a nest box that's stable, so it doesn't move around a lot. It doesn't shake around in the wind, and you can easily set up a birdhouse on different types of poles. We have some here at the store that are super, super easy to put on a birdhouse. We can do it for you even. This is my favorite, the one in the middle. It's so, so simple to attach. It's a square, a square pole. It's almost like a shepherd's hook, just without the hooks on the top. And it has two holes in the top of it. The screw will go through the hole in the pole right into the back of the house, and you can screw it in two places. It makes the house super secure, and then you can just stake it right in the ground. It is so easy. That is what I have most of my birdhouses on. But then we also have other poles that we have flanges and things that'll screw into the bottom of the house, and then you can screw them into the ground. So we've got all kinds of different hardware for your birdhouses depending on what kind of setup you want. So most birds do like that stable, steady pole. But then there's also the hanging birdhouses. These are the easiest if you're just trying to, if you're just starting out, or if you want something really simple. You can put out a hanging house. You can just hang it from a shepherd's hook that might be in some cover. You can hang it from a tree. And while not all birds will nest in a house that swings around, some birds like chickadees and wrens are really well known to do that. And if the hole in the house is big enough, you might even get sparrows in there. Every once in a while, we hear about a downy woodpecker nesting in something that's hanging. So that is another option. You can put out hanging houses and still attract different birds. So now I'll talk to you guys about the different types of cavity nesters that we have that are common here, at least in Western New York, and a lot throughout a lot of the East Coast also. Eastern bluebird, we've done whole classes just on Eastern bluebirds alone. They are cavity nesters. They will nest in a house that has an 1.5 inch diameter opening. So they need a house that has an opening of that size to be able to fit in. And this is what a bluebird nest looks like. This is from one of my bird houses. This is from one of my sparrow resistant bluebird houses, which has a rectangular opening, which is kind of a specialty house to attract bluebirds and try to kind of discourage the house sparrows. You'll see also with this house, it has a really shallow nesting cavity. Some of the nesting material down here on the left, on the bottom, is kind of covering it up, but there's wooden blocks in there, which make the nesting cavity really, really shallow. Sparrows prefer a deep nesting cavity, and bluebirds don't mind a shallow nesting cavity. So that's one way to entice bluebirds, but to kind of keep these sparrows at bay. It's just not their favorites. It's never 100%, but it can really help keep them out. And then I must have been monitoring them, and then there was 4 eggs in this box, which is really exciting. And we are getting reports of bluebirds building their nests. These are some pictures from a year or 2 ago that Bob had sent in, but don't be surprised if you open up one of your bluebird houses and you start to see some nesting material in there. We even had a customer yesterday that said they had eggs in one of their bluebird houses. So really exciting time of the year. They will build their nests with a lot of tall grasses, And it's a pretty neat nest. Some birds don't have very neat nests at all. They're very messy, but bluebird nests are pretty neat. So don't be surprised if you start seeing birds with nesting material in their bill. It's an exciting time of the year, and that is definitely happening. Now, another cavity nester you might see, especially if you get bluebirds, because bluebirds do like that wide open space, a wide open area. That being said, we're getting reports of people who have a good amount of trees, who are in suburbia, who are getting bluebirds coming to their yards and starting to investigate their nest boxes. But bluebirds do prefer an open meadow, open space, tall grasses, fields. And if you have that kind of habitat and you've got boxes out, you might also get this bird. This is called a tree swallow. That's what my background picture is too. Tree swallows will nest in cavities. They have a really bright blue iridescent back and really strikingly white breast, and they use a lot of feathers with their nest building. And these are a couple other nest boxes of mine that have tree swallows in them. And so you can see that they will build a nest with some tall grasses, and then they also on the top will add a lot of feathers, usually their own feathers. They'll just pluck them out and put them right in there. So if you open up your nest box, there's a lot of feathers in there. It's probably a tree swallow. These are the house sparrows. If you've ever put out a house or a feeder, you've probably gotten the house sparrows. Any of these birds that nest in cavities, because the amount of cavities and holes in trees or net or bird houses, because it tends to be kind of limited depending on how many there are around, there is what's called nest site competition, where they will fight over spots where they can nest. And house sparrows are definitely known to compete with other birds, especially bluebirds, for nest sites. House sparrows build a pretty messy nest. It can be full of grasses and leaves. Sometimes I've seen pieces of plastic in there, plastic bags. And this is what their nests or their eggs look like. They are white with brown spots. House sparrows are an introduced species, so they're not protected. So they could be, you could remove the eggs or the nest or the birds themselves if you wanted to from your birdhouse. Same with the European starling. European starlings are cavity nesters. They are non-native, but they're around lots of places. Now, you might not be getting European starlings in your nest boxes unless you're putting out some larger nest boxes like owl houses and woodpecker boxes that have larger openings. Because a European starling is pretty large of a bird, they're not going to fit in your typical bluebird house. They definitely won't fit in a wren or chickadee house. But if you have a larger house out for larger birds, especially things like I mentioned, owls, woodpeckers, wood ducks, you might get yourself European starlings. This is what their nest looks like. Again, they're not protected. Their nests are pretty large. They'll fill that whole cavity up. Lots of grasses. They kind of weave them together. It's a quite beautiful nest, and this is what their eggs look like. They are very light blue. Wrens love to nest in boxes. They'll nest just about anywhere. We get very fun stories all the time of different interesting places that wrens nest. Probably the best one we've heard and seen pictures of is somebody who left their clothes out on a clothesline overnight, and the next day a wren had started building a nest in one of the pockets of, I think it was either shirts or it was some jeans, and they left that garment out, and actually the nest was able to produce nestlings that went out into the world. So wrens aren't super picky about where they will nest, and these are the birds that will nest in those swinging houses you can put up in trees. I get them nesting in my bluebird houses. There's two specifically you're most likely to see: the Carolina wren, which you might also get at your bird feeders, and then the house wren. So those are our two common species that you'll probably see if you're getting them nesting in your yard. I get a lot of house wrens in my nest boxes, but people all around get both pretty commonly, and they will use sticks to build their nest. So lots of sticks inside that nesting cavity, and they will fill that whole thing up. So don't be surprised if you start to see wrens with a whole bundle of sticks in their mouth or in their beak as they're starting the nest building process. Chickadees are another cavity nester, and because they're so small, just like the wrens, you can get a house that has a hole small enough that chickadees and wrens will fit in, but larger birds like the sparrows won't. So the chickadee size is like the cutoff. If you're trying to get birds to nest, but you don't want sparrows, get a chickadee house and you will be all set. The diameter opening of the chickadee house is 1 1/8 inches. So anything that size and smaller, a sparrow won't be able to fit in. Now, if you have a house and you want to make the opening smaller, we do have the plates that you can screw on the outside of those houses to make the whole size smaller to kind of limit what can go inside. But chickadees will not only nest in stationary houses, here's one nesting in a hanging house, but they will use lots of moss with their nest building. So you open up your nest box and it's full of moss, it's going to be from a chickadee. Some other cavity nesters we have locally are going to be things like tufted titmouse. They're in the same family as the chickadee. They have very similar habits, and they are also a cavity nester. Nuthatches, so those little birds that you might see crawling around on the sides of trees and coming to your bird feeders or your suet feeders, they are also cavity nesters. And even brown creeper, if you can see it in this photo because they blend in so well. This is another bird that you might see creeping up the side of a tree. They nest in cavities, and so do all of our woodpeckers. Pileated woodpecker, here's red-bellied woodpecker. I saw a pair of pileated woodpeckers maybe last week excavating a hole in a tree, so they're definitely pairing up and starting the nest building process, or nest site excavation process, I guess I should say, because the woodpeckers don't really build a nest. They will just excavate their own nest site, though. And usually there's some wood chips in there that they can lay their eggs on, but they don't build a nest like these other birds I mentioned do. So we've got a few different woodpeckers you might see nesting in trees. You can also get houses for woodpeckers, things like downy woodpecker, the red-bellied woodpecker, pileated woodpecker. But if you put out a woodpecker house, though, you might want to keep in mind that the European starling, as pictured here, can fit inside that house. So if you want woodpeckers and not the starlings, you might need to do some maintenance of the house as far as keeping an eye on it, opening it up, monitoring what is going inside. And then there is the great crested flycatcher, which is pictured here, which is also a cavity nester. So these you might see coming to birdhouses if you have a large birdhouse, but you're probably most likely to see them nesting in hollow trees. So really cool bird there. The great crested flycatcher will be coming back into town also. And it's not just songbirds that will nest in houses. Some birds of prey will, like screech owls. We do have screech owl houses. We also have houses for American kestrel, which is a small falcon. And screech owl houses and the kestrel houses are pretty similar in their specs. So if you've got a screech owl house, it would be suitable for a kestrel and vice versa. And then there's also wood duck. If you are around a marsh or especially a wooded, swampy area, you can put out houses for wood ducks. Sometimes screech owls are known to nest in these too. Sometimes woodpeckers will nest in them as also. That's a little nestling, a little duckling getting kicked out of its wood duck house. And then some other cavity nesting ducks we have are things like hooded merganser and bufflehead. So a couple other duck species that you might see nesting in empty cavities. And there's more than just bird houses, which are completely enclosed. You can get things like these nesting platforms, which are semi-enclosed structures to help protect the birds and keep them a little bit protected, but they're still kind of open to the elements. Birds like Do I have them here? Yes, robins will use things like this. They are sometimes called robin roosts. They have a roof and they have some kind of platform. Sometimes the sides are open, sometimes they're closed. But birds like robins will nest in these, and mourning dove are what you're most likely to get on these platforms, these nesting platforms. So that's another option. So I know a lot of you guys have that issue sometimes with a robin might be nesting on top of a light fixture or somewhere where you don't really want them, maybe on your deck. You can put up a nesting platform like this somewhere kind of close by, and that can sometimes help entice them to nest there, and you're not going to get all the debris and everything right next to your door. It'll be kind of more contained where you want it. So that's one thing that you can do to help maybe encourage the bird to nest a little bit further over than where you're getting them. Barn swallows also nest on structures. They'll build their own nest made out of mud, but we also have these little barn swallow cups that you can screw into the side of a house or a shed, or they love things like gazebos to nest in, something with an eave. Barn swallows, you might see them under bridges. I see them under bridges a lot if you're going along the canal or anywhere under a bridge. In about definitely a month or so, you'll see a bunch of swallows. I haven't seen them come back yet, but they will be soon. And here's their babies. I love this picture. It's really cute. And then there's birds that will nest all communally all together. Things like purple martins, who like houses with multiple cavities in them. They are usually anywhere between 8 chambers or 24 chambers. There's some purple martin houses you can just keep adding levels to as the colony expands. They'll also nest in gourds. So these are purple martins. If you ever go out to Montezuma, the wildlife refuge close by, they have a really, really big purple martin colony that you can see there that nest. So really cool, right by the visitor center. And then so those are the most common birds that will nest in cavities that we have here in Western New York. And you can still attract birds that might not nest in cavities with nesting material. Things like the nesting balls. We just got a whole bunch more of them in stock. Birds love that nesting material. It's all natural cotton. There's a little bit of string in there. The birds will perch onto that nesting ball and pull out the nesting material. Sparrows absolutely love it. As we go further in the season, around July or so, the goldfinches will start pulling it out. They nest pretty late in the year. They absolutely love this fluffy, fluffy nesting material. And you can also use things like pet fur or pet hair. If you're brushing your pet and they're shedding a lot, you can stuff that fur in a suet cage, or if you've gotten one of these nesting balls before and once it's empty, it's just kind of a mesh or like a string mesh kind of thing. You can refill it with things like pet fur. Birds will absolutely use pet fur for nesting material, especially tufted titmouse. And this is a picture here of a tufted titmouse pulling fur directly out of some kind of animal, which they are known to do. So you can absolutely use pet fur. You should try to stay away from dryer lint. It's just not known if any kind of chemicals you might use in the washing of your clothes, if that can harm the birds in any way. So if you're using any kind of detergents, you definitely want to stay away from dryer lint. But the cotton, these cotton nesting balls, it's all natural cotton. Nothing is processed. Those are fabulous for the birds, for nesting material. And you might have seen these. We talk about these a lot in the winter. These are called roosting houses or roosting pockets. They're a little too small usually and too shallow for the birds to nest in, but these are used more for the winter to stay out of the elements, just as a space to basically hang out, to stay warm, to stay out of the rain and snow and wind and whatever else there might be. And that being said, we have gotten reports of wrens nesting in these roosting pockets, but this is another thing you might see when you're kind of out shopping for your bird cavities for them to nest. So they'll use these, especially as we get into the more nasty weather in the winter. So that is what I have prepared for you as far as nesting goes and nesting cavities and what you're likely to get if you put up a nesting box. But then you guys have been sending in pictures of some birds as you've been going out, so I've compiled some of those and I thought I'd share them with you, especially because some of these are migrants that haven't been here the past month or two, and they're coming back into the area. So it's a really exciting time of the year. Things like this bird, this is a killdeer. Killdeer is a type of shorebird. They're a pretty early migrant. You can find them along any kind of shoreline usually, but you can also sometimes find them in parking lots or in newly developed places where there's a lot of mud but not a lot of development, or if it's, say, new construction of houses where the lawns haven't been established yet, you might see killdeer. So like their name suggests, their call sounds like they're saying killdeer, killdeer, killdeer. So if you go out at all, you can probably hear them calling, if not from the ground, while they're flying over. So killdeer are definitely back. Here is a cavity nester, one of the birds I was just showing. Wood ducks will nest in cavities. So do these hooded mergansers, and there's been quite a few of them seen around town. This is the male hooded merganser on the left. Really striking black and white plumage on their head, and then the female still has kind of the funky shape of that plumage that looks like a big hood, but she's more brown in color. Bald eagles are definitely around. There's bald eagle cams out there monitoring nests. And this is a picture of a bald eagle sent in by Mark J, and a nice adult bald eagle. And then he also sent in this picture of a wood duck pair at Tinker. And we did a walk at Tinker through the store just about 2 weeks ago. It was on April 1st. And we saw so many wood ducks that day. We saw wood ducks. We saw a huge flock of rusty blackbirds, which is cool. But there were quite a few wood ducks there in the woods. And so a lot of people got great looks at them. And so here's a picture, some pictures of the wood duck at Tinker Park. So it's a really good place to go to see some wood duck. Lots of song sparrows are here. There are some that can be seen in the winter, but you're more likely to see them in the spring and summer. I've been seeing lots of song sparrows around, and they'll start to sing even more as we get into the spring. They tend to perch high up on a tree or shrub, and they just sing their hearts out. So that is the song sparrow. Here's a trumpeter swan, so different than the mute swan we see so often with the orange bill. This is a trumpeter swan that was seen at Kings Bend Park, and this picture was sent in by Mark. And then also a little ruddy duck, really cute little duck with its tail feathers sticking up. Picture of ruddy duck also at that park. And then here's some more hooded mergansers. This is, again, another picture from Mark, who said, this day I was photographing in a snow squall, which has been pretty common this week, actually. This is at Kings Bend Park also. He had some hooded mergansers and killdeer calling away. And this is a great picture because you can see even in the female how they get their name hooded merganser. It looks like she's got a big hood of her plumage, makes their head look really, really big. But it's not always flared up like that. Like in the male here, you can see it's kind of down, but sometimes he will flare his plumage up to make his head look a lot bigger. A couple more pictures of them there. And then there's the killdeer calling away with its beak open, just calling and calling, it looks like. Belted kingfisher, if you're anywhere by water, keep an eye out for belted kingfisher diving in the water to grab little fish. Mallards, there's lots of ducks passing through right now, so you're probably pretty familiar with mallards. Also northern pintail, so they get their name from their long, thin tail. So there's pintail around. Here's a good picture of one in flight. You can see that nice little pintail. You can also see the color on the wings, which is pretty cool, that green and kind of really light brown, light tan kind of color on the wings. Northern shoveler. This is a cool bird. Its coloring is similar to that of a mallard because it has that green head, but they have a huge bill, and you can kind of see that here. It's very wide and large. So this is the northern shoveler, and while they're in flight, they have some beautiful wings too. They have blue, white, and green on their wings. Really pretty duck there, northern shoveler. Some more pictures sent in by Mark J. This is an adult bald eagle at Montezuma, and also some sandhill cranes. I think he said these were just at the visitor center. So really cool. I never used to see this many sandhill cranes around. So seem to be expanding their range, and you can go see them at Montezuma. Some blue-winged teal. This is a great picture here of male and female. And then he also has pictures of them in flight, and you can kind of see why they get their name, blue-winged teal. They have just like the northern shoveler has the blue and green on the wing, so does the blue-winged teal. And same as the female, you can see the blue on her wing too when she's in flight. Turkey vulture, been seeing lots of turkey vulture hovering around. They tend not to flap when they're in flight. I know out of Braddock Bay at the Hawk Watch, they've been getting a lot of them flying over. It's a great time to look for turkey vulture and other birds of prey migrating through. If you didn't get to see the presentation on Tuesday given by Dana Ford of Braddock Bay Raptor Research, I would highly recommend going back and watching it. It's really, really cool. She shows the diversity of hawks and raptors we have in the area. And right now is the time where they are migrating through. And so on a nice day going out to that Hawk Watch platform, you can see a lot of different birds out there. And then here's another bird that has been migrating in, northern rough-winged swallow. Nice little picture there sent in by Mark, as well as some birds of prey, red-tailed hawk and a juvenile Cooper's hawk. So really cool. This picture of an osprey was sent in by Walter yesterday, who was able to capture this. This is another bird flowing into town, another bird of prey. They weren't here in the winter. They eat lots of fish, and they are coming back into town. So keep an eye out for osprey by the water. They have those really big, long wings. Really cool bird there. Double-crested cormorant. So if you're by the water, not only will you see lots of ducks, and you might see osprey and the eagles, double-crested cormorants. There's definitely more of them out there now. Pileated woodpecker. Looks like it could be excavating a nesting site here. And then another type of flycatcher is the eastern phoebe, and this is an early migrant. We saw these at the walk at Tinker a couple weeks ago, and they are coming back to the area as well. Oh, whoops, this one snuck in here too. This is a little morning cloak butterfly. So even though it is early in the season and still not very warm out, you might also see butterflies too. Morning cloaks are one of the first butterflies to come out in the spring because they spend all winter as an adult. So they hibernate and they freeze basically in their adult form. And then once it gets warmer, they start to fly around. So if you are setting up a nesting site and if you're setting up nest boxes for the birds, we recommend you make sure your birdhouses have a clean out. It's very important to remove the nests and keep that nesting cavity clean once the birds are done with it. So maintain that house the best you can. Definitely clean it out. You can wipe it down. Multiple nest box sites help alleviate nest site competition. If you've got birds fighting over nesting sites, you can mount them close by to one another. You can mount them within anywhere between 15 feet and almost right next to one another, and that can help alleviate the nest site competition. And then if you are not having much luck with nest boxes, make sure that they are mounted on something stable. And if you can get them to face east, that's always ideal for the birds. So it looks like there are some people on here with, whoops, I'm clicking on the wrong thing, with some comments. So let's see, Steel Monkey is on and says, I'm getting cowbirds and northern flicker, red-bellied woodpecker, and red-winged blackbirds. I have my grape jelly out, but still no orioles here on the Cape. Yeah, you'll probably get them before we do here, but we're still a couple weeks away until we start getting reports of orioles, but it'll be soon. Ed is on and says, earlier this week we had 7 male red-winged blackbirds all at once at the feeders. We also saw 1 female red-winged blackbird later, and there seems to be a couple male red-winged blackbirds still hanging around as well. A female red-breasted grosbeak has been popping in to visit the feeders as well, but no male just yet. Oh, that's exciting. That's the first I've heard of them. The female red-winged blackbirds and rose-breasted grosbeaks look very similar, but the size and beak shapes help differentiate the two. Seems like we might have some nesting possibilities soon. Yes, I would think so. Sounds like it. And Lynn is on, says my goldfinches are getting their spring colors back. Yes, that is very true. They are starting to turn that bright, bright gold. So it's always an exciting time of the year when they start to do that. Stacy is on and she says, I have several bluebird houses that I haven't, that I've yet to get nesting bluebirds, only sparrows, but I'm not giving up. I checked on them this morning and two had nesting material in them, which consisted of a small amount of grasses and some moss. Is there a way to tell early on if it's from a sparrow or a bluebird so I know whether to clean it out or keep it going? Probably the best way to do that is to just keep an eye on it and see what's coming and going. If there's moss in it, it makes me think that it's probably not a bluebird, but it could even be a chickadee though. So definitely keep an eye on it and let me know. I'm trying to think if I've ever seen any bits of moss in my bluebird nests. I mean, it wouldn't be that crazy, especially if there's a lot of grasses in there. So I'd keep an eye on it and see if you can catch what's coming and going in the nest box, because it sounds like it's early on and it might be hard to tell. If you can capture a picture, love to see it. That would be awesome. And then Uplink USA says vultures are masters of the sky. Yes, they are. They can glide really, really easily throughout the sky and spend a lot of time airborne. So it looks like that is everybody's comments and questions for the day. We have a ton of different nest boxes here. If you are trying to set up some kind of nesting habitat for birds in your yard, absolutely stop on in, and you can shop online. And we are offering free delivery if you are in Monroe County all month long, and we ship everywhere in the country. So feel free to visit our website, which is thebirdhouseny.com. And thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be back on Tuesday with another broadcast. And until then, have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.